All right, so I am now getting my thoughts together here. I just took my dog for a walk. She made a nice poop. She actually pooped yesterday in the morning. She pooped in the evening. And then she pooped this morning. I'm like, wow. And so it's good because she's on a regular schedule. And my husband came home last night for a bit. And so we both were exposed to him. And I know he's bringing stuff from the road. And she's doing fine. Actually, she slept most of the night. So I'm pretty happy with her development and her maintaining status quo. Okay. And so I was watching the news this morning with my husband because I slept in a little bit. And of course, they're covering the whole school thing, over there in Uvalde, Texas. And I'm just thinking about like human sacrifice and what does that mean and what the ancestors did 5,000 years ago, because that's really where all of our reference points of what we're doing today came from, was 5,000 years ago. And there's the Sumerian pantheon, there's the 6 different civilizations, and then of course the spanning of all the different cultures and religions and belief systems and ethnicities. And so then I'm covering the witches side of it. And then I realized, yeah, vampires are the viruses that came from the witches, but you see how much the idea and the lifestyle of Wiccan and witchery is all over Nickelodeon, Disney. Remember Sabrina the Teenage Witch? And there's a Netflix series with a different actress, but before that it was on regular TV. We have that Hocus Pocus, we have the Crucible, we have the Craft with Feruza Balk, whatever her name is. She looks really trippy. Now you're going to see what our society was built from. It's built from, yes, the witchcraft. And on top of witchcraft and wizardry and warlocks, yeah, you have the spells, the curses, and the gifts, but you also have human sacrifice. And then all the apothecary antibiotics, the herbs, and all of that. And then, of course, translated into the medicine world, then caused the fertility and the different personality types. And so that's now you're going to see me merging in what was done in the Renaissance period, which then led to all the different religions, homeopathic, allopathic, naturopathic, licensed professionals. And then, yes, you had to have a form of human sacrifice, because when you have so many cures, because cures cause fertility. What's a cure? Well, they're not using salt and water. Maybe they did way back when and realized it caused people to be infertile, right? Because you're cured. And when you're cured, you're not evolving, okay, in the area of salt and water, but you're also not dropping children, new and innovative children that could be the new prototype. So there's a lot of different things going on, and there had to be experiments. And that's why the New World Order and them saying in an indirect way, like in The Walking Dead and Van Helsing, that, yeah, they made mistakes. They have created such monsters in our society, and now they have to shove Pandora back in her box, but it's almost impossible. So how do we do the human sacrifice that was done back in the Aztec days without going to the altar and ripping somebody's heart out, or sacrificing babies and all that stuff that was done back then in the Sumerian pantheon, in all, the Aztecs and all the different, old civilizations. We can't go back to that uncivilized way of doing things. We have to have a way to do a civilized human sacrifice where it's the person's choice, that we're not dragging some virgin up a volcano and throwing her in to appease the gods. That, again, is very uncivilized, and we are a first world. We can't do that. We have to give people the choices. We have to. we can't repeat World War II either again, but in some countries they're doing what they do and you can't stop it. And so, we've given people the choice, come to America and be innovative and work your ass off so you don't have to be subject to something that is still very archaic in how they go about doing it. So how do you promote human sacrifice so you can keep the balance? Well, yes, there are the viruses. Oh, yes, there are the viruses. And whatever happened yesterday came from the viruses. Okay? Again, I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to go into that conspiracy rabbit hole that you can't prove and it sounds crazy. But viruses, when they are being triggered because of all the different programming and the different medicines that people are under, that's causing them to go a little cuckoo, and then also the stress of their life. And the people around them that are not accepting them, or they're getting bullied in school, or they figure out they have no future, and or they are focusing so much on certain aspects of mainstream media, or they're watching a lot of movies or video games, or the fear world, and it's rewiring their brain, and they act out their desires or dreams, whatever's going on up here. And we've seen it like in the 1960s when all the LSD and the different cults and the groups and the sects, SECTS, and then you had the Charles Mansons, you had the Jeffrey Dahmers, you had the Charles Ings and all the different serial killers, and then you have things that are happening in between. And then we have people getting triggered, and they're focused on their politics, their religion, their science, and they become radicalized, and then act out their politics. And people do drop hints left and right. People either ignore it, don't want to believe it, or they're waiting to see if it's going to come to surface because of whatever. There are agencies that just don't want to deal with it. And maybe there's a fine line of when do you actually take somebody in before they do anything. Just because there's indicators doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And so then you have to wait for something to happen. And then you're like, oh, okay. But still, it's a fine line of trying to stop something before it happens because of what you think is going to happen. And that's the pre-crime and minority report, but that's still unconstitutional, right? We can't just go and haul everybody in because we think they're going to commit a crime sometime in the future. And so then things have to play out. And so there's so much going on in this, in the way in which we are now going down this trajectory of human sacrifice, depopulation, and it's something that is going to naturally happen through the viruses because we have built our society on radicalizing people in their homogenized groups, in politics, in religions, and in the scientific dogmas that now Mother Nature has to keep the balance in whatever form. And I'm not going to put names because there's no point in that. It's not just one name or two names or five names. We all have contributed to the decline and the downfall of our society because of our excesses, our lack of evolving. We don't want to feel pain. And we've been taught that we have to go and perform every single day and not take breaks and work until we die or work until we can't do it anymore. And it didn't matter if the work that we were doing was unethical or was going to cause, conflict down the road. As long as we were getting paid, it didn't matter what we were doing. So in a lot of ways, we're getting punished for our lack of awareness of what we did for a living. That we were so greedy for money, that we were so greedy for a lot of things. And then, and so Mother Nature has got to keep the balance. So the use of cures develop eventual curses. And then human sacrifice is necessary because cures cause fertility. And when entities are too fertile, they reproduce exponentially, thus consuming all the resources in the environment. And so what are we teaching our kids? What do we teach our kids? To just consume and want and not give back and find a way to lessen the consumption, lessen the exploitation of their environment. I mean, we've taught our kids to just be irresponsible citizens, and now the tables are turning and Mother Nature saying, no, we cannot keep going the way we're going. Okay? And so that's why cancer happens. That's why disease and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders happen are from the viral cures of all the things that you're trying to do to stop the pain. But when you're stopping the pain for a minute, it's like the viruses, the antibiotics and the probiotics, which you are probiotic, and then all your cures are antibiotic. And so, yeah, it's kind of shocking to the system, but maybe why you don't feel the pain anymore, because they are in copulation. They are fertilizing each other. And during that fertilization stage, you know, you keep people having sex together. They're not saying too much, right? They're busy having fun and pleasure, and so you don't get too much of the uprising or too much pain when you're always in pleasure, right? I mean, that's when you look at reproduction or conception at the macro level. Yeah, people don't rise up when they're getting their needs met, their hormonal needs met. Well, that's the same thing when you're putting a probiotic and antibiotic together. You don't feel pain. What you feel is just like no pain, right? Because now those little microbes are having sex with each other. And then what happens is when you take your prescription drugs and your cures on a constant basis, that's on a positive body, then you keep replicating and creating, and then mucus and all that stuff. But people don't have atrophied their first and second lines of defense. And so they're not aware of what kind of Garden of Eden that is growing inside of them until the monsters take over. And then that's what cancer is. That's what disease is. That's what chronic illness is. That's what autoimmune disorders are, is when all of that replication has then caused the body to then grow even faster, because part of the body is being eaten up as well as, you know, being cannibalized and sacrificed. And so there's got to be that balance. And so plus meets minus, and Mother Nature finds a balance, and so she also can be out of control. And then good meets evil. And then children also come from the cures. And so when you have so much fertility going on, there's got to be a balance. And that's where the human sacrifice came in. Because, yeah, when Mother Nature feels so much heat, okay, because you know that heat from humans cause then the influence of the weather. When the cold fronts come in and you have such a hot population, there's going to be tornadoes and storms and things of that nature. So the Indians and the indigenous people understood how the weather and the elements were influenced by the humans. And so the more they sacrificed people, releasing and burning up the entities, yeah, there's going to be a bit of a chaotic thing happening, because you're burning bodies and they're adding more heat to the atmosphere, causing then the turbulence. But then things calm down because you don't have as many people, you don't have as much heat, causing the elements to go a little cuckoo. Okay, so human sacrifice was practiced at least 5,000 years ago among the early agricultural societies of Europe. Danish farmers sacrificed their stone axes and flint tools, their amber jewellery, and their food by depositing them into pots together with human offerings in bogs. So that's why the plains are doing all their chemistry, because they're trying to offset the heat from the humans who are reproducing exponentially, children, as well as their cancer, disease, and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders. And then all the activists and everyone going out to the streets and raising a ruckus and causing even more turbulence in the environment. And of course, the elements are going to be influenced by that. And so while you think they're destroying you, you have to realize that you're destroying yourself. You're contributing to the chaos by your lack of awareness, by you wanting to have your status in your politics, religion, and science. And you want to make all this money, and you don't care if you were consuming, and you're gambling and using up so many resources that, like the whole crypto and the whole crypto mining, and think you're going to hit it big and all that. And yeah, the billionaires are correct. It's like empty investments. You're investing in nothing. There is nothing innovative about crypto at all, except people want to make it big. It's a fucking MLM. But that's the greed of our society. That's what's being purged out, are those that are just not aware of their daily practices, and that they're not contributing anything to Mother Earth. They're just consuming and fucking greedy. And that's what I picked up on a lot of things in our society. And then I had to change my ways of doing stuff. And I looked at my mistakes I made. Okay, so where does the idea of human sacrifice come from? In Central America, the ancient Mayans and the Aztecs extracted the beating hearts of victims, remember Indiana Jones, on elevated temple altars, it is no surprise then that many of the oldest religious texts, including the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, and the Vedas, make reference to human sacrifice. Of course. Of course, because when you are nation building, nations can get too big. And that's when they have slaughtered so many people all at once. And you've seen stuff on Facebook where they found mass graves. It's probably why things happened the way they happened in World War II. And that wasn't an isolated incident. It happened even back in the days of antiquity. You hear about it here and there, and people are shocked, like, oh wow, mass graves, mass graves. But what are you going to do? When you have so many dogs in your house and you don't have enough food to feed them, dogs got to go. Some dogs got to go. You can't afford to feed all this life when the rate of food growth is slower than the rate of the consumption. Then what happens is then the entities that are trying to feed are going to feed on each other, and they're going to cannibalize each other. And that's what happens in bodies that don't understand, antibiotic and probiotic will cause so much growth. And so then it cannibalizes. And there's the whole Ouroboros, self-cannibalization, as well as projecting wars out there. So the fear of salt water came from the fear of peace, infertility, and then dying as a crypt keeper. Okay? So I'm sure they experimented with salt and water and fear, oh yeah, it's a cure. Yeah, it is a cure, but then you're not fertile. You're not fertile, you're not taking in new information, you're not dropping babies. Maybe you can be cured for a certain amount of time, and then you're losing substance because you're not hungry. And you're not taking on the new information. And then that's the thing is that, so that's why I think that's why they scared you away from salt and water. But is there a balance? Well, there is if you can handle the painful healing symptoms or the painful fertility symptoms. That I've been feeling these different viruses, and I've been coughing. I had a little bit of a persistent cough. But let me tell you, this morning, after I ate my Taco Bell last night, my husband came home and brought me Taco Bell. I had a little bit of a stomach thing last night, so I just pooped, and that was it. A little bit of stomach gurgling, but that was it, nothing else. And this morning I released a bunch of stuff, and I'm thinking whatever it is that gripped me for the last couple weeks, okay, that caused the persistent cough, caused me to sneeze so much yesterday. I went out and took the dog for a walk and didn't come in sneezing. But whatever gripped me came out through my poop. Because I saw a lot of mucus stuff, okay? And so the food that you take in is going to code your DNA and strengthen you. And when you're releasing when you're pooping and peeing and everything, all the little microbes that could work against you down the road are coming out into your waste with the food that you're eating. But when people don't eat and they don't hardly poop and they're always using J juice, that stuff stays inside and it cannibalizes them. And so I think the system is like, well, people are not going to understand how to use salt and water. And they've bred so many people with so many different personalities on such a high level, because you see many people are what the main, focus in our society is you get married. Well, first you go to school, you do your homework, you go to college or go to a trade school, then you find your girlfriend or boyfriend, and maybe you're doing girlfriends and boyfriends before you actually go and get married. Then you get married, you have at least 2.5 children, and that's the nuclear family back in the 1950s, 2.5 kids and a dog. And then you go in your career, you either stay at home mom or you have a career and you have a babysitter or a nanny or whatever, daycare. And so then we have so many kids, so many of them, and they are reproducing that quickly on bodies at a deficit because no one's dealing with their fertility issues like symptoms correctly. What they do when they feel a sniffle or they feel a pain, they take an antibiotic, and then that creates then new viral pandemics. See, that's what the holistic world, which is, I call it the witchy world. All the natural remedies came from the apothecary, and that was what then prompted biotech and the research, medicine and research and the surgeries to go and figure out how to extract extra entities from the aggressive infinite sacred geometry. And then we can't do what happened, in the Aztec days of human sacrifice, of slaughtering thousands and thousands of people. And so then you have the war. You have all the viruses and the different medicines and the palliative care and the hospice to go do all the human sacrifice. And so the thing is that we need human sacrifice because we can't have too many people on this planet consuming with absolutely no regard for their friends or family or anything. And so then you have to realize that the virus is going to be the one to take people out. And you have to, and you really have to accept that you are being given a choice. That if you just don't want to change and you're all about consumption and you don't care and it's all about now, okay, well, the virus is going to be the judge, jury, and executioner. And then you won't know when things are going to pop up. But our society is civilized. They're going to allow you to leave this world with dignity. Around your friends and family, around all of your associations, and everyone's just praying for you and creating parties for you and all that stuff. And so that's why that's why some of the Christians think that they're being attacked. Well, the religions came from the witch world, okay? Remember, all the 19 different witches is not just like the pagans, it's also the religious witches and all of their home remedies. And I'll tell you, who gravitated towards the jelly juice the most? It was the religious world and most of the women. Some men were gravitating towards jelly juice, but it was mostly women that were gravitating towards me. Because they needed a new concoction. And yeah, it's a cure, but it's a cure that first it's a catalyst. And people weren't prepared for the energy. And some were like steadfast and knew that there was something to it and stayed with it. And then it became a cure. And then they weren't evolving. They were just like all happy and I have no more issues. And then I'm like, everyone's like, great, but that's not really the point in this dynamic environment because you're supposed to feel all the viruses. You're not supposed to be cured. Because eventually, when you have an imbalance where you're not assimilating to the environment, then the environment's going to cannibalize you. And that's thermodynamics and entropy. Though you won't be fertile. When you're doing so much juice all the time, you will not be fertile. Not only will you not evolve to the new viruses, won't feel anything, but you can't have a baby either. So in order for you to have a baby, you have to feel the symptoms and be exposed to the new viruses. Viruses cause fertility because it's, again, plus meets minus. When it's in your body, it's a plus. When it leaves your body, it's a minus. It'll be a minus to somebody else, to their plus, cause fertility. Cause then mucus and whatever triggers to whatever issues you have already, your predispositions. And so there's a constant energy conversion when it comes to these viruses. And we're going to see a lot more viruses in the future. Because they're going to put out antivirals for the Marburg virus, the Ebola virus, and other types of cold and flu viruses. Someone inevitably is going to take it and then cause another viral baby out there. It's going to be out there in the population, and you're going to have to deal with it. And yeah, it'll make you fertile. It could make you pregnant. Well, it could make you fertile to where you want to go and get pregnant. Some people will cause the cancer because they're not lengthening their telomeres. They're taking so many antibiotics. And they don't want to have a baby because maybe they had a vasectomy or they had their tubes tied. And so then cancer happens. And then potentially tumors and maybe even teratomas if you're lucky enough to get the surgeon to show you what they pulled out of your body if you went through those types of surgeries. So anyways, fertility and symptoms go hand in hand. So the fear of salting out could make someone infertile if they do not balance salting in and dealing with the symptoms to potentially be fertile and produce strong offspring. And that's what's missing in our society is strong offspring, because we have people reproducing on bodies at a major deficit and they're older and older. And when you're older and older in this society, you are depleting resources. So someone who is 72 years old producing a baby, that baby will be at a deficit and it will have a hard time leveling up to people around them because they are so much at a deficit. Because a mother is 72 years old who's lost substance for many, many years. 72 years old, you don't have hardly anything to offer that child. And that child will be sensitive to everything. And it will be painful. So I don't, I would not, I would not recommend anyone who is in this simulation where they are gradually aging and losing substance to have a baby at 72 years old, because you're not first of all, you won't be around to raise that baby, and that baby will be at a major deficit. So the issue is, we have such a fertile society, we have not bothered to allow our offspring get strong in body, mind, and spirit. Thus, the weaknesses of mankind produce weak offspring, and right now it shows. We have finicky kids, kids that are entitled, kids that are they're irresponsible, kids that are just suffering because of just things going on in their household, as well as the school system and their environment, and then all the stresses of, and they're under so much, stress of just trying to fit in a society that is changing, and they don't know where they fit in. They don't know where their place is. So the hormone distribution of archetypes and personality types from the herb canon of medicine, programming people through their hormone distribution / viruses. See, the Hollywood stars, comedians, geniuses, all have been biologically programmed, and you too. Blood types also come from the methodology as well. So when you think about Robin Williams and how he was developed and then groomed to be a comedian on some level, and he came from a predisposition. And there is the theory of humors, where there's different vapors and gases and liquids that you can add to a semen and an egg, and splice and dice and then cause or even inhaling something, and it causes different personalities to come up. That's why you get the 16 different archetypes, and then what people will naturally go to based upon their hormone distribution and their background. And so then you see what experiments they did back in the days of antiquity, in the days of Egypt, and then what we also did in the Middle Ages during the Renaissance period. And so from all the different uses of the drugs and the vapors and the things that they were experimenting on, then people were writing, so many things. They were with language, different languages, different medicinal text, apothecary texts. Then you have the new religions and the Wiccan religions and all that. And then you're seeing how our society came from of a very base prototype that then advanced itself because of the exposure to the different viruses that were infused with different vapors and different things, and then caused personalities in people. And then you also the kinetic energy of building up like Trojan warriors. And you see the kinetic energy, and you see what the Delta Force and all the Navy SEALs, what they had to go through to build up their character, to build up their body. Some die through, in basic or in their initial training. Nowadays, it's crazy with this environment, because with all these viruses swirling around and people have predispositions, they can't handle the stress of the basic training or of just even doing their daily life. I just saw on somebody's page who is a journalist in California, and another one of her activists, her anti-V activist, passed away from a heart attack. And there's like just 12 hours ago, she was posting online about how everything is go and do this and do that as far as anti-V and legislation. And they're like, she just died from a heart attack. And people are like, she just posted 12 hours ago. And I looked it up and I'm like, holy shit. She didn't say that she was dealing with any kind of, issues. It was like that quick. People, you don't realize when you are around people. That's what I'm saying. The human sacrifices, it's going to be within your lifestyle and your belief system. You hanging out with so many people on body at a deficit, and then the body is replicating so much or reproducing so many proteins, more than your heart can handle. And if you already have heart issues and predispositions, then people don't survive heart attacks and strokes. And that's what is missing. That is the lack of awareness of the activist world, when they don't understand how this shit works. They don't understand why people die. They don't understand that when they say that this virus is aggressive, and you have the activists that are journalists in California who are all about the legislation and their kids are falling apart from lack of bone density because they're on their low sodium diets and gluten-free diets, that they are setting themselves up and their followers for fucking disaster. But it's more important to collect the social capital. It's more important to be an anti-V activist while then your followers are dropping like flies. But hey, they were greedy for the social capital. They got a lot of return on that investment. Because as soon as they posted like anti-V stuff, then they get all these likes, and people thrive on their audience's return, their audience's, validation. And so when you have such a huge following and they're all validating you, you think you're going to be aware of anything else but whatever it is you're doing. No, you'll be the sacrificial lamb. And that's what goes on. So then the system has created you to develop sacrificial lambs, and they like it. And people won't say anything against what the person's doing, because then they would come off as being the party pooper. And so the system has built in sacrificial lambs, and there could be your friends, your family, anyone that you're not willing to really take a stand for. And so then people enjoy watching someone's downfall. And then they'll contribute to it, because again, people feed off of the negative energy. They feed off of the human sacrifice. That's why the public hangings back in the days of yore was such a spectacle, and people were just deriving so much gratification from it. And so the system understands. Who's the system? Well, you know who the system is. They understand the greed of just sucking the life out of people is what keeps people going. And so if you want to be a sacrificial lamb in your world, fine. But now you know that you are one. And you can't say that someone did it to you, or a therapy or something else, because you've been given all the choices in our society. And you still were greedy for all the social capital. So you can be the sacrificial lamb, going out there and putting your sign up and hanging out with so many diverse groups of viruses / people. And then you die of a heart attack. And so what was it all for, Miss Activist? Oh, that's right. She left a legacy. It was a legacy. And that's another way to justify why you would die for a cause. I mean, this is some pretty intense stuff. And so, yeah, California, man. California, the land of activists, the birthplace of the whole, the drug movement, the hippie culture. People don't like California, right? They hate California because they're all right-wing, but they're all about the hippie stuff. But the hippie came out of fucking California. Yeah, Woodstock. So it's interesting how the right-wing people can still play up to the hippie shit. That's how confused our society is. They don't understand. They just regurgitate. They don't understand what they do. They regurgitate. And so the whole theory of humors, the theory held that 4 different bodily fluids, humors, influenced human health. So black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood, all of that influence health, and it also influences people's personality. An imbalance could result from inhaling or absorbing vapors. Medical establishment believe that levels of these humors would fluctuate in the body depending upon what people ate, drank, inhaled, and what they've been doing. And so you see all the alcoholics and the spirits, My husband, when he says that he drinks, clear alcohol, it makes him mean. That's why he only drinks dark alcohol if he does, or beer. And I've seen him really drunk with white alcohol, and yeah, he's a little mean. He doesn't do that. He sees what he was like when he did that, and he's like, he won't do that again. Okay? And so, yeah, there are certain things that people drink that will cause another personality to come out, or eat, because there's lack of sodium chloride, lack of dealing with their predispositions. And so human sacrifice is something that's voluntary. It's not going to be dragging virgins up the volcano. It's not going to be just doing a mass, type of genocide like what happened. It might happen in third world countries, which we can't get involved with, okay? That's not our problem anymore as far as America and the West. But in the West here, we're not going to have what happened in World War II here. Now it's you are volunteering to sacrifice yourself. And your friends and family are going to validate you for being the human sacrifice. And you see that all over Facebook. When someone has cancer, disease, and chronic illness, guess what? The timeline is like, phew. And the person who is sacrificing themselves in body, mind, and spirit, going to get all their different surgeries and whatever, they get validated for being the sacrifice. That's how insidious human sacrifice is when it's built into the culture versus have it be like on the outside coming in and upsetting the homeostasis. No, human sacrifice is built into the first world culture, and that's strategic. But you got to know what it is. And now you have a choice. You can be the sacrificial lamb and get validated, but now other people can see how that goes on, and they can choose for themselves not to be the human sacrifice and get validated by their friends and family to be the sacrificial lamb. Now you have a choice. Before you didn't. You just were. People just accepted. Oh, you're supposed to die someday. No, you don't. You don't have to. But somebody has to. All right, bye.